So this year has been quite challenging for everyone, including all the restrictions, the lockdowns. But for the refugees, it was just much more than that. It was a threat actual to their livelihoods. This year, the UN CHR theme is about Together We Heal, Learn and Shine. And this is a great theme because it means a better inclusion of the refugees in the communities so that they can access the health services, meaning they can access medication, they have a fair share of the vaccination. They can also be better integrated in the education system to avoid lost generation of education of the refugees. And this will lead them to shine. Together we shine, making valuable contribution to the communities through sports. The refugees can be a real player in the team. The South Mediterranean region hosts one of the largest number of refugees in the world. Countries such as Lebanon is the highest country of the world hosting refugees compared to its population. It is hosting 20% of its population of refugees. Whereas in Jordan, refugees represent 10% of the population, making it the second largest in terms of the relative number of refugees to their population. For these host countries, refugees can represent a challenge, but they also can represent an opportunity for if they are well integrated in the society.
This year's UNHCR theme for the World Refugee Day, Together We Heal, Learn and Shine. To that extent, the inclusion of refugees in the health, education and sport is key focuses at our work as UNHCR in Jordan to make sure that refugees are well included in the national system so they become less dependent. Of course, refugees came with a wealth of experience and skills, so rather having them recipients of assistance, their expertise and skills can be utilized in a very structured manner through engaging them in the economic activities so they can contribute and benefit from the economy at large. A vast majority of refugees are daily workers, and this entails that the impact of the pandemic made it hard to them to find the means to cater for their day-to-day needs. In this regard, UNHCR, through its communication with community structure, were able to identify the community needs and the priorities and respond accordingly, where more than 56,000 families were assisted.
We realized that many challenges are overlooked. And I would say the most apparent and main challenge they face is the lack of opportunity to build their lives and those of their children. To be able to do that, there is a need for a revolution in job creation. Today's jobs are not only hindered by the needs of the fourth industrial revolution, but also the recession caused by the pandemic and the shift towards green transition, green jobs, and green technology. As a whole, our message to the host community, to the international community and the private sector is that refugees and the local population will live in hardship if they do not meet those new needs of the economy. Many refugees are educated and talented, but their talents are being wasted. And these talents will need a revolution in new skills that would meet the new market needs. Therefore, to access jobs, there's a need to direct youth towards lifelong learning, as well as the key jobs of tomorrow, such as green economy, data and AI, engineering and product design. At the same time, not only jobs need to change, but also the surrounding flexibility around those jobs need to change in terms of working remotely, part-time, or having flexible hours. This will contribute to the entry of women and youth, as well as people with disabilities and people who have mobility restrictions. On a positive note, the proportion of refugees with COVID-19 has remained low at 1.6% compared to 3% among the general Jordanian population. Yet Jordan has become one of the first countries to start COVID-19 vaccinations for refugees. Refugees will only be a burden if they do not access good education, good health, and appropriate jobs. Only if they do, they will be able to integrate, contribute to the labor force, and to the society's well-being.
The COVID situation has imposed a reality and a fact for us to identify how important the healthcare and healthcare system is for refugees in specific. Education as well, noting how much the education national systems was impacted with the pandemic. And of course, SHINE, which is an indicator to support refugee youth for enhancement and development and using their skills and capacities, noting that in Jordan, almost close to 50% of the refugee population are children and youth. UNHCR provides protection and humanitarian support to 750,000 refugees in Jordan, among which are Syrians, Iraqis, Yemenis, Somalis, and 45 other nationalities. Throughout the One Refugee approach, UNHCR Jordan office ensures decreasing any differences in applying those protection and humanitarian services based on nationalities. In Jordan specifically, refugees access national education systems based on the Education Strategic Plan, which is strongly aligned to SDG 4 and to the Education 2030 framework. In 2020, the world turned into digital education and provided digital learning opportunities. Despite the different efforts by government, private sector, civil society, UN agencies, and donors to support this new digital education system and platform, refugees remained excluded and left out. This situation has also impacted refugee and host community students, such as digital divides, learning losses. It also affected and impacted their well-being, their psychosocial well-being. It also impacted the rates of the dropouts and also increased child protection risks, such as child labor, violence, and child marriages as well. Back to the digital divide. According to our statistics, refugee students were almost 50% less likely to access digital platforms and also their access to connectivity, internet, and equipment specifically was quite limited, which resulted in their digital exclusion.
So one of the most controversial issues is the impact of refugees on the domestic labor markets. And there are very few studies which actually find a negative impact. Typically, studies find very little, if any. And if they do find an impact, they tend to find that the impact is basically related to informal work. Based on my own work on the Syrian refugees in Jordan, we actually compared areas with high concentration of refugees to areas with low concentration of refugees. And we did not find any negative impact of having high concentration of Syrian refugees. We looked at different labor market outcomes such as employment, unemployment, hours, informality, and wages, and in all cases we did not find any impact. And there are several reasons for that, and I'm going to emphasize two. The first one is that typically, as a society hosts more people, as we have an influx of people, those people also demand more goods, demand more services, and therefore this leads to more job creation. In addition, in the case of Jordan, the inflow of foreign aid also did help to create more jobs and to create more services. The most important question which policymakers are thinking about is how to integrate refugees, especially if we're talking about long term. And the first important aspect would be to integrate refugees in the labor market, to make sure that refugees have access to the labor market and have access to decent jobs, because this is how they would look after themselves, and also this is how they would contribute to the host community. Doing that, at the same time, one needs to realize that it could be that the host community and vulnerable people in the host community might feel uneasy and might actually feel unwelcoming towards influx of refugees. And this is why it is important not to forget the host communities, but to also help the host communities to build this trust towards refugees. Another important dimension is children. It's important to ensure, especially when we're thinking about long-term crisis, to integrate children in the educational system, to make sure that children actually invest in human capital. So one particular area which we've looked at in the case of Turkey is whether having a class, full of refugees, or entirely refugees, or having the right mix of natives and refugees, produce sort of better outcome for the social integration of children. And we actually find that, mixing is a really important dimension. It's something which more studies need to look at to actually find what is the best sort of mixing strategy for integrating children. In addition, it is important to also realize that in many cases, teachers are not prepared to teach children who are vulnerable, who've been through trauma and who've been through, conflict. So it's important also to ensure that we study more what actually needs to be done in terms of ensuring what is a cost-effective way to actually train teacher and to ensure children's integration, both for refugees' sake, but also for the host community's sake.
There is a lot of research that has been done about the labor market integration, education, but there are still gaps, as mentioned by our experts, that needs to be filled in. In FEMIS, we have done quite a lot of research on the refugees. One of our latest report on refugees is on the repatriation of refugees from Arab conflicts. It's about the condition, cause, scenarios, and reconstructions, and this could be accessed from our website. This talks about in the hopefully scenario where these refugees will be able to return back to their communities. However, it looks like there is a long term before they are able to do so. And in the meantime, they need to live in the host communities where they are. And the best way for them to have a good welfare, to have a good life, is to be integrated as part of the society, despite the big challenges that this will offer. So with the help of the international organization, the donors, the international community, these refugees will be able to take part in the society and give a good value added.